Question number 3, Andrew Little.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. Does he have confidence in his Minister for Building and Housing, given that since he became responsible for housing, the average Auckland house price has risen by $221,000, which works out at over $250 a day?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker, given that he inherited a doubling of New Zealand house prices and 80% jump in Auckland prices under the previous government, yes, and here's why. We've signed housing accords with 8 councils, including Auckland, to speed up housing development. Since the Auckland Accord was signed in October 2013, more than 16,700 sections and homes have been consented. We're freeing up more land for residential development through 84 special housing areas in Auckland alone, capable of providing an extra 43,600 extra homes. The government's providing a $200 million loan to the Tamaki Redevelopment Company in Auckland to develop around 7,500 new homes, and we've introduced the new Home Start package to help around 90,000 first home buyers into houses over the next 5 years.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, Andrew Little.
Does he think that the average house in Auckland is affordable for the average Auckland family?
Mr Speaker,
the Right Honourable Prime
I think
Minister.
it's always a challenge buying a house, but one thing that average families will appreciate is the much lower interest rates under a national-led government.
Supplementary.
Order. Order. Supplementary question, Andrew Little.
Given that last year his big housing policy was cheaper nails, and since then Auckland house prices have risen by $115,000, what effect will this year's policies have on house prices?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, as the member may have seen from the Productivity Commission and others, the right response, of course, to the issues in relation to housing are around the supply side. And as I mentioned, the government putting more money into Tamaki redevelopment, special housing areas, reform of the RMA, fast-tracking the release of government-owned land. All of these things are building the supply side and actually were endorsed by the OECD recently, I think.
Supplementary question, Andrew Little.
Has he seen any reports about the impact of building on Crown land on Auckland house prices? And if so, have those reports been updated to base their conclusions on 30 conceptual hectares rather than 500 actual hectares?
Well, Mr Speaker,
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
what I have seen is the government's policy, which it's going to release between 400 and 500 hectares of Crown-owned land. Given there's 150,000 of them in Auckland, I'm pretty confident you'll find that the government will achieve that.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, Andrew Little.
Given the long list of Nick Smith's failures on housing in the past few weeks, does he still have confidence that Minister Smith will succeed in finding 500 hectares of land that the Crown actually owns and that iwi don't have first dibs on, and build a meaningful number of affordable houses on that land? And if so, why?
Order. Order.
Speaker,
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Of course he will, and that's for the very reason. Well, members laugh, but they wanted to build, was it 100,000 homes? Where were they going to build them? That's right, on a cloud, because on the pricing they'd done, there was no affordability for those sections.
What a hopeless answer that was.
Supplementary question, Andrew Little.
Why is he content to sit on the sidelines while his minister makes a mess of Auckland housing and the Kiwi dream slips out of reach of more and more families?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker, one of the problems with the facts in this debate is they're very inconvenient for Labor, because Labor's Phil Twyford's on TV moaning and whinging and complaining, but actually he doesn't want to mention the special housing areas or the RMA or the extra land that's being released or the Tamaki redevelopment or the first home buyers grant. He doesn't want to mention those because those facts get in the way of the myths, and that's why Labor's doing so badly. No one believes you, Phil.
Question number 4, James Shaw.
Speaker, my question is to the Prime Minister.